Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something incredibly fascinating. And honestly, it's a topic that might totally surprise you just because of how simple it sounds. Look, when we talk about global education, Japan undeniably stands out as an absolute titan. But what's the hidden engine actually driving that level of national success? Well, it boils down to a concept captured perfectly in a single phrase: Japan's education secret. Textbooks. I know, it sounds super basic, right? We all know what textbooks are. But as we're about to see, the way Japan handles its core educational materials is anything but ordinary. It's a highly structured, meticulously controlled, and just astonishingly efficient national operation that leaves literally nothing to chance.
And that brings us to a massive question. I actually want to pose this directly to all of you tuning in, but especially to our viewers in India, since we know you're experiencing massive educational growth and reform right now. Why do Japanese students consistently rank at the absolute top of the global OECD education charts? For a little context, the OECD charts are basically the global gold standard for comparing international academics. So is their success just about studying for crazy long hours, or is it entirely a cultural mindset thing? I mean, those elements absolutely play a part in the broader picture, for sure. But our source material today reveals that a massive and honestly often overlooked piece of the puzzle lies in the actual physical books sitting right there on the students' desks.
Now, our insights today aren't just coming from a bunch of dry government data or bureaucratic summaries. We're getting a real inside look from someone known in Japan as an education butler. How cool of a title is that? We're talking about an expert guide who has over 25 years of hands-on teaching experience in both public and private schools. Today, they privately coach elite families. We're talking doctors, business owners, academic professionals, guiding them through Japan's highly competitive educational labyrinth. And the reason this matters for us is because this grounded, super experienced perspective shows us how the Japanese system actually functions on the ground, day to day. It gives us an unvarnished look at the real mechanics of the system, completely stripped of all the usual political rhetoric.
So to make sense of this, we're going to break things down into 4 clear areas. 1, the course of study. 2, the authorization system. 3, free nationwide distribution. And 4, uniform results. Let's get right into it.
Starting with number 1, the course of study. Before a single textbook is ever written, printed, or dropped into a student's backpack, the national government steps in to lay down the absolute bedrock of the entire educational ecosystem. The Ministry of Education, often just called MEXT, establishes what's known as the course of study. You can kind of think of this as a highly detailed, incredibly strict national blueprint. It tells everyone exactly what has to be learned in every single subject at every single grade level across the entire country. And to keep things fresh, this isn't just some document gathering dust in a filing cabinet. This massive blueprint is systematically reviewed and revised from the ground up roughly every 10 years. This huge undertaking ensures that the whole nation's curriculum evolves together to meet new global standards and technological advancements, all while maintaining absolute 100% uniformity. Moving on to part 2, the authorization system. Okay. So the life cycle of a Japanese textbook is this strictly controlled, highly centralized process that ensures total adherence to that national standard we just talked about. Step 1, the government sets those comprehensive guidelines. Then, step 2, private publishers get to work creating drafts of the textbooks. But here's the catch. They have to base those drafts strictly and exclusively on the government's guidelines. Step 3 is the real bottleneck. The government rigorously inspects every single draft, and they only authorize them if they pass every single requirement. Finally, step 4, those officially authorized books actually make their way to the schools. This pipeline basically guarantees that absolutely no rogue material or unvetted teaching methods sneak their way into compulsory education. The crucial takeaway here is just how remarkably tight these rules really are. In Japan, an educational publisher literally cannot just write a brilliant textbook and start selling it directly to schools, teachers, or parents for core classroom use. It's legally restricted. The content absolutely has to align with that 10-year national blueprint. During the inspection phase, the government actually holds the power to order mandatory revisions. That means they can look at a draft and say, nope, you need to completely rewrite these specific sections before approval is even on the table. Ultimately, only these meticulously vetted, officially authorized books are legally allowed to be used as core textbooks in Japanese classrooms. There's a really stark contrast here between Japan and a lot of other nations, and it highlights a fundamentally different philosophy of education. Think about a highly independent, decentralized publishing market, like you might see in the United States or the UK. In those places, schools, districts, or even individual teachers might mix and match materials from all sorts of publishers who write whatever they independently think is best for the kids. But in Japan,
Deviation from the centralized government standard is just not permitted. It is a purposefully closed, highly regulated loop. The whole system is designed to ensure unquestionable consistency across every single classroom in the nation.
Which brings us to Part 3, free nationwide distribution. Let's break down the logistics of how this massive operation actually works, because delivering these materials is honestly a triumph of national coordination. So while the central government authorizes the books, who actually picks which specific authorized book a school is going to use? Well, local teachers and local boards of education get to select from that pre-approved list, which maintains just a small degree of local agency. But crucially, who pays for it? The national government covers absolutely all the costs. That means zero financial burden on the parents. It totally eliminates a massive stressor that plagues so many other educational systems globally. Who gets them? Every single student in compulsory education, so elementary and junior high. And this massive distribution happens nationwide, like clockwork, every single April at the very start of the Japanese academic year. Our education butler shared a particularly striking detail about this. What happens if a family moves halfway across the country right in the middle of the school term? Well, if a student relocates to a new district that happens to use a completely different authorized textbook, the system automatically and immediately hands them the new, correct local textbooks entirely for free. It is an absolute, unwavering commitment to uninterrupted, equitable learning. The system is quite literally built so that no child is ever left behind just because they moved or because their family couldn't afford to buy new localized materials. Finally, Part 4, uniform results. So, how does this actually play out in the classroom? Well, execution is intensely and deliberately textbook-centric. Teachers in compulsory education are legally obligated to cover every single guideline laid out in the course of study. And because those guidelines are so vast and complex, daily lessons rely heavily on these authorized textbooks as the main vehicle for instruction. But get this, the system goes even further to eliminate any wildcards. Publishers also provide these highly detailed teacher's editions. And we aren't just talking about answer keys. These books come with specific, step-by-step instructions on exactly how to explain the core concepts to the kids. This essentially removes the variable of teaching quality. It ensures that whether a student is sitting in a snow-covered classroom up in Hokkaido or a tropical school down in Okinawa, the baseline education quality remains remarkably identical across a population of over 120 million people. Now, the textbook isn't the only tool at play here. There's actually a highly synchronized ecosystem between the classroom and the living room. At school, students learn the foundational concepts directly from that free, government-authorized textbook. But textbooks alone rarely have enough repetitive practice problems for a kid to really achieve mastery. So, at home, students practice using supplementary workbooks. Here's how the dynamic works. Parents do pay out of pocket for these workbooks, and they aren't directly checked by the government. However, private publishers deliberately design these workbooks to align perfectly, literally, page by page, with the official textbooks. Why? Because they know that's exactly what the children are studying during the day. It creates this completely seamless, deeply interconnected loop between public school learning and private home practice. And all of this highly structured learning, it builds toward one absolutely critical, high-stakes moment in a Japanese student's life: the high school entrance exams. In Japan, these exams basically dictate a student's entire future academic trajectory, which, as you can imagine, brings immense pressure. But this strictly unified textbook system actually guarantees a level of fairness during that intense period. When a student sits down for that exam, they are tested strictly and exclusively on the mandated junior high curriculum. There are no surprise topics. There are zero trick questions drawn from outside the government guidelines. Simply put, if a concept wasn't formally included in the authorized textbook, it is not going to be on the test. This all brings us to a really powerful, summarizing thought from the education butler. Quote, "This massively unified, textbook-centric system is a direct mechanism behind Japan's consistently high academic performance in international OECD surveys." Think about that. It isn't a coincidence. And it certainly isn't an accident. The consistently high scores we see on the global stage are the direct engineered result of a system that guarantees every single child learns the exact same high-quality material at the exact same pace with standardized instruction, all provided entirely for free. So I've got to ask, and I'd love for you to reflect on this. How does your own country's textbook system compare to this? Do you have this level of central authorization and free guaranteed distribution? Or is your system completely decentralized with different regions doing their own thing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if you found this deep dive into Japan's educational engine as fascinating as I did, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out.
and we're going to keep bringing you more incredible global education secrets in future explainers. Thanks so much for tuning in today, and keep learning.